Hello, and good morning, and welcome back for another exciting, enticing, and amazing episode of the Sit Down Stand Up podcast, where I am joined by my mighty mug of marketing, and together we are trying to bring you stories that are not unfunny, and also just talking about things that hopefully aren't not unfunny. That's way too many negatives. I'm not entirely sure how that works out, but let's just say it's not about weighing things down. That said, I would like to I want to explore something, and I say explore something because I've thought about this a little bit, but not enough to I'm not opining right now. I'm thinking about it, and I'm trying to sort it through in my noggin. Okay, because we got some more superhero movies coming up, and I'm looking right now. I got what's it called? Superpowers, Batman, Superman. And then the Secret Wars, Doctor Doom, Captain America, Iron Man, and Spider-Man. And then a couple Battle Beasts. These are all icons from my childhood. I'm not actually necessarily a fan of them now. They are simply, as I said, icons. They're from the 80s, 1986, 87-ish. Or so, and so the only modern character I have right here is All Might-o. This is All Might in his when he's first not when he first fights, his second fight against All For One. If you know, you know, where he's partially powered, partially not. Anyway, I don't collect. What I don't know if these are Funko or bobblehead or what. They're not Funko. I don't know. I don't do Funko, but whatever that is, it's the only one I have, and it's only because it's All Might, because it was hard for me to find like a figure that I really like. But I like that moment in there where he is the last embers of his strength powers are waning, and he's been beat to heck, and he's trying to rise up. He is the symbol of peace for the people. And anyway, there's a whole big dramatic thing. And so I think, like, to me, in anime, that's the equivalent of the scene of Gohan or Goku behind Gohan as Gohan is walking down Cell, shooting the Kamehameha, and you just see kind of Goku appear behind him. It's not like he's actually there, but it's kind of a spiritual thing. Like, I think that's a pretty intense moment where, literally you're seeing a pass. Well, not literally. You're seeing a passing of the torch, and you're seeing the father-son bond, the father-son connection, and seeing the son finally stepping up and stepping into his place. And of course, the Buu Saga throws all out at the window. And I do apologize for anybody who doesn't know anime or watch anime, because all of this probably sounded just like Japanese, sounded like a foreign language. So I'm not going to go too much further down that. But my point is, I grew up, I wouldn't say idolizing, but I grew up liking superheroes. I've mentioned before, I had my Superman pajamas that got me into a bit of trouble. I don't know if I told that story or not. So I did. I had the Superman costume. It was Superman PJs. It was a shirt. Now, to be fair, it wasn't one of those ones where, how like Halloween costumes, it's a Superman Halloween costume, but it's just got like pictures of Superman doing things on the front of it. It's like, that's not a Superman costume. That's Superman branding or advertising, or just a Superman shirt. It needs to look like, it needs to have the big S on the chest, and it needs to have, blue arms, and you need to have blue legs. Ideally, you would have the red briefs, not looking at all like actual briefs with little vent holes in the sides or anything, but actual, I think they were modeled after, not Muscle Man, what were they called? The Strong Man. Like in the circus, you had the strong man, and it was usually a guy with just kind of like these, sometimes tights, but just sometimes a pair of briefs, and he'd be doing the strong thing, usually shirtless and everything. So I think that's what Superman's look was modeled after. The whole brief thing was a certain look by strong men of the day and what they would wear. And I mean, it does help give the whole ensemble some kind of form and distinction. As I'm looking at it now, neither Captain America or Iron Man have it, but what are you going to do? Anyway, point being, the costume should look like a just scaled down version of the suit, not have like Superman written across it, or have something on the back. So anyway, the PJs were pretty close. They were blue, like the shirt was blue, and it had, I don't know what they call them, but the elastic bands that are around the wrist to kind of hold the sleeve onto your arm, I guess. Those were red, so we're already off the beaten trail. It'd be more accurate to just have kind of like a long sleeve t-shirt that just ends. Granted, it wouldn't be clingy because it's not made out of the same stuff as like tights or whatever the heck they used, like for not Keanu Reeves, my goodness gracious, Christopher Reeves in the movie. Whatever material that was, obviously mine wasn't made out of that. It was made out of PJ material, but it was blue all the way down, had the logo on the shirt or on the front, and the pants were just regular pants. They didn't have it wasn't even like red coloring for where the brief line would be. There was no belt. So I just kind of had to tuck the top into the bottom. Not if I was using them as PJs, I wouldn't do that. But when I was fighting crime, that's how I would keep my shirt from flapping about. And of course, no boots. So I had to wear my ruse. I don't know if y'all remember those. They were like gray sneakers that had Velcro straps, and there was a little pocket on the side where you like, it was like this big. It was big enough where you could like put a quarter in there. So it's kind of like penny loafers, but to the next level and kind of casual. But yeah, they were gray with red letters. I have to look those up at some point. It's been a long time. So I had my little Velcro ruse, and I had my Superman PJs. But the crowning achievement of this particular ensemble was there was actually a cape, and it was a legitimate cape. It was red and had the gold version of the Superman logo on the back, just like the real deal. And it Velcroed by two little points here on the shoulder. Granted, it didn't even get to the middle of my back. It wasn't a very long cape. Well, actually, no, it probably did. It probably went about to the middle of my back. The size of slightly larger than average hand towel, I would say. Fortunately, not made out of the same material. It was also made out of whatever the rest of the ensemble was. So, if I ran, I could look behind me and kind of see the cape billowing behind me, and I could feel like the real deal. And so I remember one day distinctly, if you went out the back door, we had a small little backyard, open the gate. Just outside was a green electric box, one of those big, just electric junction boxes. And I walked out, minding my own business. Suddenly, a cry of distress in my head. I ducked behind the green electric box. I'm wearing at the time, my ruse, my ruse tennis shoes, and a pair of jeans and a peach colored polo with a little, it was interesting. Around the collar, it had just like this white line. I thought it looked pretty snazzy, but yeah, definitely a peach color. Can't call it salmon. Can't call it wasn't pink, but it was definitely a peach color. Anyway, I hear the distress call. I unbutton my shirt and I reveal a little bit of the S. It's not the same as a button up where you can actually like pull it down and it, can go all the way to the middle. I revealed a little bit of the S and ducked behind the electric box. And quickly, somewhat awkwardly, underwent the transformation to Superman. I stashed my clothes behind the electric box, just left them there. I didn't think anybody was going to come along. And I took flight in the neighborhood to seek out distress and where that cry had come from. And I explored many places, and I flew down the streets and the sidewalks. I finally found the perpetrators. 3 middle-aged kids. I do remember, I'm not going to use last names, but Jason, pretty sure Landon, and there might have been one other one. I mean, I know there was one other one. I just can't remember his name or who he was. I didn't recognize him. The other 2 I recognized from the bus. They were the bus stop. They were at the bus stop after or before me. So if I came early, I might see them. They were around the neighborhood. 2 of them lived in the rival development. We had our little development was called Bentley Circle, and there was a creek, and on the other side was effectively like a sister development. It's interesting because the townhouses were slightly different in terms of like how they were put together, like the interiors. Because I had a couple friends, Eduardo, Landon. Did I visit anybody else out there? There were like I think 2 other friends that I occasionally would see out there. But it was kind of like, I think it was the same side, the same amount of houses, the same kind of setup, probably the same developer, come to think of it. But it was Windale Court. That was, and I don't know, I think we thought of ourselves as rivals, but not, especially at that age, not really. And there weren't enough people in Windale, like kids our age, there weren't enough. There were a handful And our numbers were vast. We had many more. There were many more kids my age in Bentley, but there was no gang stuff, no any of that kind of thing. It was just kind of a jokey thing. Oh, they're from Windale, huh? Okay. But then if you had a friend in Windale, you'd go visit them and you wouldn't think twice about it or say anything about it. And it wasn't like we pretended. I remember me and Ben, when we'd play Army in the woods right around that creek area, we'd pretend that we were infiltrating enemy territory. Because the creek, it's a creek. Like, it gives you a boundary. It makes you feel like there is some distinction there. There's a border. And so we'd cross that, and then we'd do spy missions. But of course, we're kids playing either in the summer or the middle of the day, and whatever day, maybe a teacher's work day or something. Nobody's around. Nothing is going on. All the adults are at work. All the kids are either in school or they're probably playing Nintendo or something. So we would spy it out, and there would literally be nothing happening pretty much all day. So we had to make up our enemies. Anyway, it was a fun thing. There was never, it would have been nice if we had enough where we could do like sports stuff, where we could have had, when you play pickup games of football, which we did a ton, and basketball, you could have Windale versus Bentley, but there weren't enough. Same thing. There was, what was it called? Green Valley. I mentioned that before, but there were only 2 kids there that were my age. And granted, they were very athletic. They made they made the sports teams and all, but it wasn't enough where we could have a 3-way rival. It was just it was small town stuff. But anyway, these 2 of them I know were from Windale. One of them I wasn't sure. I assume he was also from Windale. But one of them, Jason, had a bit of a reputation. So I was not naive going into this altercation, thinking that these were going to be chummy. And I don't know, honestly, there is no recollection in my mind whatsoever of the exchange between me talking to them and what happened after. I'm not one of those delusional kids where I would have been like, halt, evil doers, put my hands on my hips. It more than likely, the little bit that I have a sense of, we were talking meta. They're like, what are you running around in your PJs for? I'm like, I don't know, I'm just doing the Superman thing. Like, I'm Superman, obviously. What are you guys doing? What are you doing here? Why are you Windalians in Bentley Circle? Huh? What brings you to our lands? Obviously, it's something along those lines. It wasn't, and I don't know, maybe they did play along. Be like, oh my gosh, it's Superman. What are you up to, Superman? And I was like, I'm defending the neighborhood. I don't know. I don't even know what I would have said at that age. I mean, based on what I've described, huge dork, so I couldn't tell you. But I know for a fact I wasn't standing arms akimbo and pointing at them, calling them evildoers or anything like that. I was not trying to confront them. It was actually very unfortunate happenstance that they happened to be where I was patrolling for evil. But I do remember, the next thing I remember is one of them being surrounded and one of them taking, because they were, I don't know if I'm sure I mentioned this, but they were at least 2 or 3 years older than me, which you think, like, nowadays, that's not a big deal. If I meet somebody who's 2 years younger than me, a lot of times I can't tell, and there's really no difference. The only reason I can tell if someone's a decade younger or not is because they like the Star Wars prequels. I cannot recall. I think there is 1 or 2 anomalies, but very few people my age that grew up in my generation, were born in the early 80s, like the Star Wars prequels, because we weren't children when they came out. We were college age. When you're college age, that nonsense doesn't fly. When you're 10 or 11 years old, it's amazing because you're the target demographic. So that's the only distinction I can really make. But back then, when you have fewer years under you, and I think that's what it boils down to, if you're 5 and somebody else is 7, the percentages, if you break down like how much of the life that 2 years is huge, because you have fewer years to work with. So each year is a much bigger deal. Whereas when you get 45, each year means a lot less in terms of the distinction between each year, because it's a smaller portion of your life. So, I mean, that was what, almost, if I was, we'll say 5 or 6 at that time, and they were 8, that's so 2 years, 6, let's say each year is worth, what is that? My brain is blanking out. Not 20. We'll just round it up. We'll just say roughly 20. We'll say 15. 15 years. So, or 15%. Each year is 15% of your life. So for me, I was, man, I'm trying to do math. That's dumb. This isn't going to work out. Yeah, each year is worth 15%. So they're like 30%. That's almost a third. We'll break it down there. Like a third more of life than I have. So the disparity between them and me is much bigger, and we're growing boys. So 2 years is enough time for you to have hit at least a growth spurt of some kind, whereas I really hadn't hit anything at all. So they're bigger. They understand life 30% better than I do. And there's 3 of them. So this was not an ideal situation for Superman. And the only thing I remember next is that my cape was torn from my shoulders, remembering it's Velcro, so it wasn't hard. It wasn't like they exerted some kind of amazing strength to part me from my billowing accoutrement. They just unfastened Velcro, and they started playing keep away. And I don't remember, again, much about it. I do remember getting teary-eyed, having blurred vision, because I really wasn't sure I was going to get it back. And so at first I did go to person trying to get it. But after a very short amount of time, like I don't suffer fools. So once I realize there's a futility at play, I'm very quick to just go, okay, we're done. I mean, you're going to do what you're going to do. And I've learned that's usually how you take the power out of stuff. And I know from experience, because there have been times where, let's say, you're younger, and you're flirting with gals, not that at that age necessarily. That's a little young. But when you start getting, noticing girls, there is the metaphorical pigtail pull. It's not actually pulling pigtails, but like Tanika Montgomery. Tanika was a gal in middle school. We were in 7th grade, and we had a crush on each other. And we didn't say anything. And in fact, she sent me a Valentine, had a little bit of perfume, and had something else on it. I don't think it was a lipstick, but it had something on there, but she didn't sign it. So I didn't know who it was from definitively, but we had been kind of flirting back and forth, and like we'd go by and try to close each other's lockers. So if she's at her locker and she's trying to open it, I would try to approach her from an angle she didn't see, because I don't know how it started, but she would open it up, and now if it was fully open, I'm not going to walk up and slam it, but like she'd get it open and I'd like put a foot down real quick. And so it would kind of bounce off and close again. And she'd look at me and, she had this huge backpack. It was hilarious. She was the quintessential nerd. And I feel okay saying that because I did look up just out of curiosity. I never found her on Facebook. I don't even know that. Yeah, I did look for her on Facebook, but I found out she's actually an attorney, general, what do you call it? District attorney, I think. And I don't remember where, but I remember looking and you could see, the last time I saw her was in 7th grade, but you could just tell. And obviously she was much small, very petite and all that kind of stuff back then. We all were much smaller, but you can see facial features. You recognize that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I see Tanika. And it was a trip. It really was to see her. So she did well for herself, as I would say expected, because she was very studious, very, very, very driven, very focused. And I was there, but not quite there. And she had the backpack that looked, it was like almost the size as she was. She just kind of kept everything in there. Anyway, I don't know how it started, but she would do it to me too. We would come up and try to close each other's lockers, or it was an excuse to hang out or hang around a little bit between classes. And her reaction, her eye roll, and she'd give me this whatever, and it was I don't know. I think it was adorable looking back. But there were, and so and I did eventually was able to pin it down, because I suspected that she had been the one to send the Valentine, and she would deny it. She denied it, and I was trying to trip her up, and everything. It was 7th grade flirtation, and eventually she did admit to it, and it never went beyond that. It was kind of like a little crush that we had on each other, and so that was reciprocated. That was back and forth, because she liked the attention, I liked the attention, and it was a synergistic relationship. But I mean, obviously a relationship built on closing locker doors and poking fun at each other was doomed to fail, doomed to fall short. But there were other girls who you could do that kind of thing with. Now, not closing locker doors. Like, we worked up to that. It didn't start off with closing the door, because you had to combo it again. And like I said, she did it to me far less frequently, because she really couldn't sneak up on me, because she had that giant backpack, and I was a little more, aware. She would be focused. I'm going to class. So I think that was part of what made it work, because of her, just how zoomed in. But there was never, I think there was a day when I did it, and she was actually flabbergasted because, I don't know, she wasn't having a great day or whatever. And so it was like I apologized and what have you. And maybe it stopped after that. I don't know. But there was a great deal of time between then where it was kind of, the attention, the attention getting. That's the pigtail pulling. It's not the idea is I'm pulling your pigtails and trying to rip out your hair. It's like, it's not cool for me to say I'm interested in you, which is why when she sent me the Valentine, she didn't put her name down there. It's not cool to admit that you like somebody. And it feels weird to say that. You don't even know that that's what you're thinking, but you're just kind of like, I really like this person giving me attention. This particular person, I really like this particular person giving me attention. I really enjoy this. And the other person's like, the same thing, wants the attention, enjoys the attention, and back and forth and so on. And we would even I remember we'd have some decent conversations at the locker so a lot of times you get thwarted. I thought I was being clever. I'd sneak up and try to close it, and she'd have put something there, to stop it. And so I'm like, oh, I see. You trying to get clever, eh? And we just end up talking for a little bit while she changed her books out, and then we'd go off to class. But you could tell very quickly, there were some girls that if you tried to flirt with or show interest in, they didn't respond. You're trying to do the pigtail pull, whatever that was, kind of teasing them or whatever. And they would just either ignore you or just kind of give you this look that just sizzled the whole thing out. And it was just no fun because they weren't engaging with you. It wasn't a back and forth. It's like you serving a tennis ball or a volleyball, and then on the other side, and they just watch the ball bounce and they just look at you like, why'd you do that? And then they walk off and you're like, okay, well. So I knew from experience as well on that side of things, as well as being the person to ignore. I got picked on all the time. I'm a scrawny kid. I'm the only one who is, I would say, faith-based, I guess. And of course, a part of it is a misinterpretation of what a relationship with Jesus is like and how that is supposed to walk out, the whole turn the other cheek thing, making it seem like you're supposed to just take physical abuse or abuse of any kind and just roll with it, which is not the case. But I'm not going to get into that because that's a little more like a lecture-y thing. But it was a different way of looking at things. And I mean, I wasn't listening to the same music. I wasn't watching the same movies. Most of the time I couldn't watch the same movies or TV shows. I just didn't have as much of an overlap with what was, what was normal. And as one of the only kids with one working parent, a stay-at-home mom, we didn't have the same money. And so I get made fun of for what I wore. And I've talked about this before. You get made fun of for everything. But if you don't react to them, if you don't get upset, if you don't get angry, if you just agree with them, they could say whatever. Oh, you're I don't know, whatever vulgarity would mean, an effeminate coward or what have you. And I say, yeah, you're absolutely right. Because really, what's the point of saying no? It's not going to change their mind. And their mind isn't probably even there. It's just we're picking on the kid because we know he's not going to do anything. And really, I mean, when it comes to words, like there is nothing to do. Like there should be no word that they would say that would rile me to the point where I'm going to do anything. The only time anything came to an altercation was if they were physically harassing me. If you're walking up, you're stealing my backpack, you're taking my hat off my head, or knocking it off my head, or pushing me, or what have you, then you would start to escalate things because me just ignoring you doesn't make you stop. You're going to keep pushing until you get a response. And one of them did. And my parents taught me a little self-defense. And so even the move itself wasn't incredibly effective. It may have knocked the wind out of the kid. They at least realized, okay, he will hit back. And it's not fun when he does. And like I said, I was very, very young. So we weren't, you didn't have to worry about like gangs or, people ganging up on you. One kid was acting out. He'd been doing it for a while, been harassing. And sometimes that's what it takes. You just go, no, you're going to do this. I warned him. I said, touch me again. And it's going to, you need to stop touching me. Like there's no reason for you to be touching me. And he did. So I gave him a little knee did the little, shoulder knee to the stomach. It was half-hearted because I really didn't, that's not me. I'm not a fighting guy, but I needed to stop. Like the whole reason my parents had taught me these different things is because I kept coming back every day saying, he keeps harassing me at the bus stop. He stole my hat and threw it down the road. So all of it's to say it's not unprecedented for those kinds of things to happen. If it's verbal, I ignore it or just agree with it, take the power out of it. And in this particular case, going back to my Superman instance, the instance of my Supermanisms, they were playing keep away, and I think I just realized, like, I'm not going to be able to get it. I'm not going to prevail against these criminals from a different planet who somehow were able to stymie my superpowers. And I just kind of gave up. And so they lost interest and chucked my cape towards the sewer. Now, I don't know if you know, depending where you're at, the sewer, it wasn't the manhole. I mean, you had the manhole on the top, but it was the gap that you have where it allowed, like, on the curb side of things, where if there's water coming down, it could just go right into the sewer. So it could, in theory, go down in there. They didn't try to throw it in there. As best as I can recall, they didn't try to throw it down the sewer. They just threw it towards the sewer. So I'd run after it. And I did, because I didn't want it to go down the sewer. But I mean, it's concrete, it's cloth. The friction would have stopped it unless they just, like, leaned over and chucked it sideways, balled it up and chucked it sideways. That's the only way I think it could have actually gone down there realistically. But it's terrifying. Its proximity was terrifying. And they probably, as mighty 7 or 8 year olds, knew it wasn't going to go down there. But I, as a wee 5 or 6 year old, did not know that. So, so they grew tired and gave my cape back. And that was the last time that Superman patrolled the neighborhood, because it became clear that the world was cruel and that people didn't like Superman. And so that, folks, today is why Superman doesn't fly the skies, because he was picked on as a kid. That's the bummer. Yeah. But, that's where a lot of times the power fantasy comes in. And it's interesting as you get older, how you look back on stuff. There's a lot of times where at the time now in that particular instance, yeah, it was a bummer, but it was so long ago. And actually I became friends with one of them later on, when we got to middle school. And again, the age difference becomes a little bit smaller. He was a tennis player and we were all playing football. So it wasn't, but he was fast. He was quick. He was good. He could catch the ball. He couldn't really throw worth the darn, but he could catch. And yeah. And there was no hard feelings. I don't remember what happened to Jason or the other guy. I don't remember who he is, but it was kind of water under the bridge, just little petty stuff that kids do. Yeah. But it does. Oh, what was that thought? Gone completely. Well, yeah. So it was long enough ago that it doesn't bother me to this day. But there are instances that have happened, which I won't talk about because they are definitely not unfunny. They are quite unfunny, and I don't know that there is a way to make them funny. There probably is, but it would just be me telling the story, and I don't know. I'd have to really put some effort into how can I present this story as not unfunny, where it's like, okay. Physical assault usually is not terribly funny. However, you think back on those times, and and when you're younger, when I was younger, I would imagine that I could go back with at least my physicality now, the strength that I have now as an adult, into that little body, or just even the wherewithal. Like sometimes it's just knowing how to hold yourself, how to conduct yourself, what you need to do, how to deal with kids, like having just even that insight, even if I'm not physically stronger, just understanding, being aware of what's going on, and maybe, a little bit of my very little martial arts that I learned, and change things, turn the tables, what have you. But a lot of the time I'm going, now that I'm older, I'm thinking, well, one, that's cheating. As much as it may be satisfying to think about it like that, or going back as who you are now with like strength or being a superhero or something, it's like, well, that's cheating, because like they're kids and now you're an adult. You have the maturity, the wherewithal, and maybe the strength of a 45-year-old man. How good are you going to feel going back and picking on? Because at that point you're picking on kids, even though you're technically younger. It's kind of a hollow thing. It's not really. I mean, if I could have gone back and trained my younger self and given him the ability or something, maybe. But me doing it just so the power fantasy goes away, and the realization that in some of these altercations, my instincts, which were to not fight back and to not provoke or what have you, and to not get in somebody else's face, might have either saved me from a lot of physical pain, a lot of fear, because there was later on gang. We were a subdivision, so it wasn't, or in a suburb. It wasn't really like gang stuff, but that started infiltrating some of the kids in the neighborhood. That mentality, that kind of behavior, breaking the law, getting in trouble with the law. When the assault or the battery happened, it was a kid who was already in juvie like twice. So it was already kind of happening at that point. But so who knows what the ripple effect would be? You go back in time and you say, okay, I'm going to stand up for myself because I can do that now, or because I feel confident now. Okay, well, then you're watching your back for the next year or so, because that guy had 3 or 4 friends and they're going to harass you, or they're going to try to find you in a place where, you're all by yourself and gang up on you. Like, you just go, you know what? I got through life relatively unscathed. So as much as the younger me at different points was like, oh, it would have been so cool to punch the guy or to do whatever. It's like, who knows what would have happened? Maybe there was divine intervention just kind of staying my hand, because it was not going to ultimately end well. Even though I did, at different points, as I said, I did stand up for myself, did defend myself, but there were definitely times where, some of the more painful times, where you wanna, I wish I had done this. It's like, nah, probably better I didn't. But yeah, anyway, that's that. That's it for today. I don't know. I decided to end on kind of a low, ponderous note, but hopefully my shenanigans as Superman was mildly entertaining, if nothing else. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time. Cheers.